Fantastic.
Action.
We're in that frame too? Amazing. Okay, here we are. So once again, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this health lecture that you're going to be learning so much, you're going to be so inspired, you may even be blown away. Most of all, you're going to be empowered to take steps on your health journey going forward. So we just warmed up with some brain fitness exercises. Thank you for doing those. How do you feel? Yes, nice. We've got a full house here. This is exciting. And we have people joining us on Facebook. So hi to all you folks out there on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we are starting with all sorts of good things. But officially, I wanted to mention that Ben is not only this amazing registered pharmacist, cosmetic chemist, lectures internationally, has an on-air radio show called The Bright Side. He's also become a dear friend of mine and one of my health mentors because what he says makes sense. He keeps it simple, he keeps it to the point, and you walk away knowing what to do. And that, I think, is the idea of a health practitioner, is to move you forward in the right direction so that you can be empowered to take care of yourself properly. So, and he's amazing at that. So, thank you. And so, thank you. So, Ben is in from Denver, Colorado, and it's interesting how we got to meet because it was through our common friend, Dr. Joel Wallach. How many of you here know Dr. Wallach? Yes, of course. Great, right? So, he's a common friend and mentor to all of us. And Ben now comes up to Toronto pretty regularly every spring and fall, and we're really fortunate to have them coming up and sharing their information here in Canada. So I wanted to mention how we met Doc Wallach. This is why we're doing what we're doing, actually. My mom, Helen, years ago, 20 years ago, had some health decline going on. She had various health symptoms that she was concerned about, to the point that she went to her family doctor and said, look, I have this going on and that going on and this ache and this pain, and look at my skin and look at my hair and my receding gums, and look at all these issues, which were symptoms of early warning signs. And the doctor said to her, well, Helen, that's just the aging process. You know, you're in your mid to late 50s now. There's nothing we can do about it, but here's a prescription for rheumatoid arthritis. Well, thankfully, my mom was always ahead of the game and never really wanted to resort to quick fixes or drugs or anything really for that matter that wasn't really natural or tried, tested, and true, and something that she really felt that she could trust. So she kind of put that prescription on hold. She didn't go in and get it filled out. Instead, she started to look around for other solutions. And have you ever heard the saying, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear? It's such a good saying. Just when she was not sure where else to turn, she turned on the TV. And there was Dr. Joel Wallach on breakfast television talking about his book, Let's Play Doctor. And he was explaining how symptoms, like my mom was having, are signs of degeneration, chronic degenerative disease, or the onset of that. And there was things you could do about it. You didn't just have to sit back and accept it and just continually decline and get riddled with drugs and medications. There was actually really healthy, proactive things you could do to rebuild and fortify your system. So this really resonated with my mom for all sorts of reasons that I won't get into right now, but the light bulb went off and she knew that this was true. So she called me and said, Jill, I have to meet this man, this doctor who is on this program talking about his research, talking about these symptoms. And lo and behold, it was kind of funny because I said, this sounds so familiar. Is it Dr. Joel Wallach? Is it Let's Play Doctor? And she said, yes. And I'm like, you can come and meet him in 2 days. He's doing a media tour. And at the time, I was hosting and producing a wellness TV show for Aurora Cable, and he was a guest in a couple days. And she said, I can't believe this. I'm definitely coming. I'm going to be there. So she came, they talked, and the rest is kind of history. Well, except for the fact that she followed his protocol, his suggestions, started eliminating the things that were causing problems, putting the right ingredients in to nourish and feed her body, and her cells, and basically the symptoms started to reverse. And she got better. She noticed improvements immediately, and they continued to the point where she's 76 now, so that's 20 years later, and she has never been on a prescription drug, and she's pain-free, and she is a going concern. We have a hard time keeping up with her. So she's really passionate about everyone else getting the opportunity to at least know this information exists, and that there are things that you can do. If you ask her why she really does it, if you've heard the saying, your why will make you cry, she'll say it's for her kids and her grandkids and for all the children out there and the future generations. And it chokes me up too, because I know how passionate she is about that. And we all are, we all care. We don't only want to just help ourselves, we want to assist others in getting healthier, especially when chronic degenerative disease is on the rise. So we're going to address this straight on, and we're going to talk with an expert who's going to answer questions and explain what is really happening. So Ben, I'm going to have you start with talking about you are a registered pharmacist. I think we'll clarify with people what makes you different.
What makes me different? Oh
Unique,
my God, that's
special.
a big question. What makes me different? You have to go way back to figure out what makes me different. But I'm only half kidding, because I always question things. I grew up in the 70s. How many of you guys grew up in the 70s? So I grew up in the United States. I'm from the States, as Jill said. And I grew up with Watergate. You guys remember Watergate? Remember that? And I remember being 12 years old and listening to, I don't know if you remember some of these names, Spiro Agnew and Richard Nixon. I remember them talking and denying everything, and then saying how they're not going to resign and it's all going to blow over. And then all of a sudden they resigned and they were guilty. And so all of a sudden, in my little 12-year-old brain, I was like, you can't believe what people are telling you. You have to question things. You have to have an element of doubt. You have to be you have to be a critical thinker about things. And so I was steeped with that kind of background of being sort of a rogue, not buying the party line. And when I went to pharmacy school, the party line was drilled into me, the idea that we use medicine, we use drugs. If you're sick, you go to the doctor. The pharmacist is the good guy. He's giving you the stuff that's going to make you better. That's what was drilled into us by movies. We got to watch movies that were presented by the drug companies, by field trips to Eli Lilly, which were mandatory, by drug reps that would come in and talk to you about the latest drugs. I remember seeing a drug that was advertised that was going to change and revolutionize cardiovascular health problems. There would be no more cardiovascular health problems with this new class of drugs, which was called a beta blocker drug. This is the first beta blocker drug. You guys have heard of beta blocker drug? Quick digression. Beta blockers work by poisoning the heart. I'm not exaggerating here. They literally poison the heart. They slow it down. The logic being that when you slow the heart down, regardless of whether you have to use poison to do it, you lower the blood pressure. Okay, this is the logic. But what struck me about this movie about the drug Inderal, presented by the company Ayers, which made the drug Inderal, is the wonderful benefits of Inderal. The movie's about an hour. The wonderful benefits of Inderal were 15 minutes, and the last 45 minutes was some lady reading the side effects of the drug, literally, and fast, not slow. 45 minutes of side effects. If you're on a drug, you should always look at what's called the package insert. The package insert is a piece of paper that's folded very, very tightly, and you open it up, and it's like a map. It's like this big, but it's folded this tightly because it's got all this information that nobody ever reads. But as a pharmacist, I'm telling you, you want to read it. And one of the sections in the package insert, one of the largest sections in the package insert, is the side effects. And there's actually two types of side effects. They call them side effects and they call them adverse reactions. And they're both different, and they're long, and there's a lot of them. A lot of them on the most innocuous of drugs, let alone the more toxic ones like prednisone or the beta blockers. So in my head, I'm already a rogue. I'm already questioning authority. I'm already seeing ridiculous things like a movie that's about a drug that's supposed to revolutionize health, where 15 minutes is about how great the drug is, and 45 minutes is about how toxic the drug is. And I'm studying side effects, I'm studying toxicity. I'm thinking in my head, is this healing? Is this really health? And then on top of that, something very interesting in pharmacy school that a lot of people don't recognize is in pharmacy school, we study nutrition. Pharmacists study nutrition. But we study nutrition like, not like a doctor, not like a dietitian, not like a nutritionist. We study nutrition like a pharmacist. Pharmacy is about medicine. So we study the medicinal properties of nutrients. We study how vitamin A improves eyesight. We study how essential fatty acids heal the skin. We study diseases as if they were nutritional deficiencies. So we study arthritis as if it were deficiencies in essential fats. We study heart disease as a deficiency in electrolytes and B vitamins. We study night blindness as a deficiency in vitamin A. So on the one hand, I'm getting this education about drugs. I'm learning about drugs as a miracle healing modality and how wonderful pharmacists are and how wonderful doctors are for saving the world. And I'm studying how deadly these things are and how toxic they are and the side effects and the adverse reactions. And then on the other hand, I'm studying nutrition. I'm studying how diseases are really deficiencies and how nutrients can be used as healing modalities, as real therapeutic strategies. So I graduate pharmacy school, and all of a sudden it dawns on me as I'm filling out prescriptions that I'm the guy giving out the poison. That I'm the guy giving out the medicine. That I'm the pharmacist. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm giving out the poison. And I started to feel completely guilty. I started to feel terrible about it. And by the way, you should know, and you may know this, that a very small sliver of the population gets most of the drugs. And they're mostly the older people and the younger people, the kids and the older folks. And in the United States, there's some 4 billion prescriptions served. And if most of the people, if it's a small sliver of the population that's getting those prescriptions, that means some people are getting a lot of prescriptions, and indeed that is the case. Some people are on 15, 16, 20 drugs. It would not be unusual for somebody to throw a plastic bag on my counter that was filled with prescription bottles and say, refill them. And there'd be 15 or 20 prescription bottles in there. And I knew good and well what these prescriptions were doing individually, let alone what they were doing as a cocktail. They call that polypharmacy. So I started to do something that was very revolutionary in 1986. Yes. I started to say to people, to suggest a little bit of nutrition. Now this is 1986, okay? And you were health nuts still. If you did vitamins, there weren't health stores everywhere. There weren't magazines about health and nutrition and supplementation and all the different formulas that there are today. Can you remember that 1986? In a way it was just yesterday, but in another way it might as well have been a century ago, or it might as well have been hundreds of years ago. So it was a very backwards time. So I started to do this thing that was very revolutionary. People get their antibiotics, and I say, you know what? Maybe I want a little vitamin C with that antibiotic. And people would get their acne medicine. I said, zinc is really good for acne. Maybe you should take some zinc with that retin-A. And I would start to suggest that people started to use nutrients with their medicine. Well, lo and behold, people would get better. And they would get so much better that they would actually be able to wean themselves off their medication and ultimately get off of their drugs, or at least reduce their drugs, or at the very least understand that there was this thing called nutrition and supplementation that could really make a difference. So then I decided, instead of telling people to use nutrients with their medication, I started to suggest to people that people use nutrients instead of their medication. Instead of your beta blocker, you might want a little magnesium because that worked like a beta blocker. Instead of that steroid drug, instead of that anti-inflammatory drug that you're taking, you might want to have a little vitamin E as a natural anti-inflammatory. Well, needless to say, Kmart Pharmacy wasn't thrilled with Pharmacist Ben at the time. And, my career was very short-lived. One day, the district manager came into the pharmacy with the security guy, never a good thing. And they took me in the back, and I'll never forget Ken Osier's, did I ever tell you this? I never forget Ken Osier's words. He said, Ben, you're just not cut out to be Kmart material.
Amen.
It was the funniest thing. I mean, it wasn't funny at the time, but it was funny in retrospect that he said that. And I was set packing, but you know what I did? I started my own darn pharmacy.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to start a pharmacy. And I did did exactly that. I started a pharmacy where all we had in my pharmacy was, I had a background in skincare, as Jill alluded to.
I know, you're going to call me my nickname, and you're not allowed to call that online.
As Jill alluded to, I was in the skincare business, so I started a pharmacy that was dedicated to helping people with their skin and with nutrition, and in my pharmacy there was only things that I made. This was called compounding. Now you probably heard the term today. Back then nobody really knew what compounding was. I started a compound pharmacy for the skin, where I compounded skincare products for people who had specific skincare issues, and I formulated nutritional formulas for people who had systemic problems. And the same thing that happened at Kmart and Albertsons, where I was also at, happened at Econocom Pharmacy, my pharmacy. People got better. And people started to become repeat customers, and I started to formulate nutritional supplements, specific formulas for people, and specific skin formulas for people, and I had a nice little business going, and one day I decided, I can't just keep this to myself. There is this powerful healing tool that's available to people. There is this myth out there about how we're supposed to take care of ourselves that doesn't serve us. I've got to scream this out. I've got to spread the word. I got to start talking to people about this, so I started to do little talks in my pharmacy, which was actually like a laboratory, more like a pharmacy, and we had a conference room, and I had people sitting around the table. First, there were a couple people, then there were 10 people, then there were 15 people, and then there were a lot of people. And pretty soon I started to get a reputation for being a pharmacist who could talk about drugs, the toxicity of drugs, as well as nutrients. Cut to the chase, long story short, I met Dr. Wallach. I got involved with longevity.
Yes. And you met Dr. Wallach and knew instantaneously about the deficiency issue, and because of your complementary backgrounds.
Yeah, how many of you guys have heard the tape, Dead Doctors Don't Lie? Okay, so I heard the tape, and when I listened to the tape, I knew this guy was right. I knew from my background as a pharmacist that he was saying the same thing I was saying. He was saying the same things that I had been learning. So he was saying it in this, obviously this incredible, powerful way. And I kept getting these tapes in the mail. One day I was working out in the gym. I happened to tell my friend that I was listening to his tapes. He's like, I know Dr. Wallach. You want to meet him? And I was like, are you kidding me? Do you want to meet this guy? And long story short, anyway, he came to my lab and we started talking and we hit it off. And unbeknownst to him, I'd been listening to his tape for like 6 months, and so he thought he was talking to his long-lost son or something. I was like repeating everything back to him that he had on his tape. And then I ended up doing his radio. He asked me if I wanted to do his radio show, and I got involved with the company Longevity. And I got to tell you this, we're here to talk about nutrition, we're here to help people with their health, but the Longevity company is dedicated to everything we are talking about. Everything that and like Jill said, there's this sense that we want to make the world better for our children, that we want to make the world better for our grandchildren, that we want to make the world better for the people who are to follow us. And what Longevity does is it gives us an opportunity in a big way. Jill and I and Helen and Dustin and Sue and we would all be doing it anyway. Right. But Longevity gives us this opportunity to amplify the message. And if anybody out there has either benefited from nutrition yourself or is the type of person that feels connected with helping people, understands the power of being a good person and contributing to the society, Longevity is an amazing way to do that, an amazing way to amplify your desires and amplify the message, and it's also a nice business opportunity as well. So that's a long answer.
That's a great answer. That is a really great answer, and how cool to get the background information and scoop on pharmacy and his journey of becoming a pharmacist and what that may look like at large. I think many of us don't think about that. So that is really cool, and also to know your story specifically. Very cool story. Thank you, right? Amazing. And serendipity, how it came together with Doc Wallach and us, because it is a company that is not just, it provides solutions through products, absolutely, but it wants you to understand and be educated and be empowered. So you can make choices in all areas of your life regarding health appropriately. And so it's so exciting. So next thing is that, I'm always saying to Ben, he does a lot of writing, and you may want to get his newsletter as well, and be in touch with his videos and resources. But one thing in particular that you've been working on is your book. Where are you in that process?
Nowhere.
You've accumulated so much writing from your articles, and what is so great is they're interesting to read, they're fun to read, and you walk away with knowledge. And so I was saying I wanted to pick the title for the book, and it's like, Ben Fuchs, Your Health, It's Easier Than You Think. because it is easier than you think.
I was going for all roads lead to gas. that was my title. And
that could be the tagline.
Okay. There's a reason for that. But no, but Jill's point is very well taken. We have this idea that it's complicated. So if you want to leave right now, I'm going to give you one powerful idea, probably the most important idea. You know, we're going to talk about a lot of details, a lot of how-tos, and a lot of what I call mechanisms. Because mechanisms, once you understand mechanisms, you can take the ball and run with your own health. Once you understand how things happen, and that's what we always talk about as mechanisms. But if you want to leave right now, you don't want any of that stuff, and you just want the most powerful idea, the theme of what we're going to talk about, this is so simple. This is so easy. This is not complicated. You have to take every idea you have about how difficult chemistry and science and biology and the body is and throw it out the window if you're sick or you want to help somebody who's sick. Because this idea it will prevent you from understanding how to leverage these powerful, simple concepts. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, you didn't understand it yourself. These ideas are so simple that a 6-year-old can understand them. Just to give you one example, I was teasing all roads lead to gas, but really what I meant was it's all about the digestive system, but even more fundamentally, all disease, and we should, I suppose at this point, make a distinction between two types of illnesses. One is traumatic illness, which includes infections or things falling on your head or getting into accidents, breaking an arm, right? As opposed to chronic degenerative disease. Perhaps you've heard that term. Chronic degenerative disease, CDD, we call it for short. But pretty much everything that's a complaint that people have that's not infection or it's not trauma, mechanical trauma, is chronic degenerative disease. Chronic meaning it doesn't go away, it's ongoing. Degenerative means that instead of healing, you break down further, you degenerate, and disease means the body's out of ease. So chronic degenerative disease covers everything from psoriasis to digestive problems to vertigo and dizziness to osteoporosis to you name it. In fact, 80 to 85% of our healthcare issues are in this realm of chronic degenerative disease. And when it comes to chronic degenerative disease, understanding how to reverse it is unbelievably simple, so simple that you're not going to believe it. So simple that you will have a little voice in your head saying, no, it can't be true. Which is why the number one thing you need if you want to reverse a degenerative disease, if you want to get better, or if you just want to be if you're healthy and you just want to maintain that health and age gracefully and slow down the aging process, the number one thing that you need to have is the willingness to believe it. The willingness to believe that the body is healing and the body can do it. If you have anything less than 100% willingness, you will be throwing stumbling blocks in your path. You'll sabotage yourself. You will make it harder. And I was just at the show, and I've been doing this for 30 years plus, and I've seen thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people, and I can tell when I'm talking to somebody if the little voice is going. Okay? Or I can see it. I can see it, and I usually just clam up at that point if I see that. And I can also see when somebody's open to hearing it. So don't let your mind deceive you into thinking it has to be any more complex than it is, because it is extremely, extremely simple, which is why I like to show mechanisms. I like to show you how the body breaks down, because when I show you how the body breaks down, you can see it's really not that complex. It's a very, very simple system, the body. The cells and the tiny little molecular systems, those are complex, but the body is just basically engineering. It's basically a plumbing system. All disease is based in something called hemodynamics. Hemo meaning blood, dynamics meaning movement. Our bodies break down because our plumbing is clogged. That's why our bodies break down, people, and it's as simple as that. Now I'm going to tell you some of the stuff underneath it, but that's how simple it is. We got clogged pipes.
So basically, people need an open mind and willingness, and that's the starting point. And if you're there, you're already on the right track. Everything's going to conspire in your favor. So on that note, it would be cool to just get a basic, just for a show of hands, and no one has to raise their hand if they don't want to. How about we'll say this: you or someone you know, wink wink, has a concern about heart disease. Is that why you're here? Okay. Diabetes, osteoporosis, arthritis, obesity.
There's some people out there going, I am not raising my hand. I don't care what she says. I am not raising it.
What other? There's so many. There's like how many degenerative disease? There's like 900,
There's
right?
There's 12,800 different diagnoses.
Okay, so we're not going to list them all off right now. Okay, we
According to
got to
the
save some
World
time. But there's lots. So you get the idea. So we saw people raising hands, and thank you for that participation, because we just want to get a baseline, because what we're then saying is, it doesn't matter why you came or what your diagnosis is, what your label is, the road to health, the